I never thought I would find myself in a situation like this, but here I am, sharing my story. My name is Jake, and for the past 5 years I've been married to Emily. At the outset, everything seemed picture perfect. We had a lovely home in a decent neighborhood, my own small but growing tech business, and friends we often hung out with on weekends. Emily was beautiful, smart, and had the kind of smile that could light up a room. But like a lot of things in life, it was all just a facade. For a while, I noticed changes in Emily. She started coming home later from her yoga classes, and when I asked about her day, her answers became vague. Little things added up. Her phone was always face down, and she was suddenly protective of it. I passed it off as just my imagination, maybe even as a sign of my growing insecurities. I remember a particular night when she got a call while we were watching a movie. Her demeanor changed instantly. She excused herself from the room, talking in hushed tones, and when she returned, she was different. She seemed distracted, her mind clearly elsewhere. It wasn't until a week later that everything came crashing down. I was having a regular day at work when I noticed something odd. My business partner, Mike, had been increasingly absent. As co-owners of the company, we usually shared updates and made decisions together. But recently, he seemed to prioritize other things, things I would later learn involved my wife. I decided to do a little digging. I checked some of our shared business emails, looking for anything out of the ordinary. Instead, I found something that made my blood run cold, a string of emails between Mike and Emily. At first, I thought it was just business-related. Maybe they were discussing an upcoming project, but the tone quickly shifted. There were personal messages, flirty comments, and finally, one email that made it all clear. It was an invitation to meet up after hours, a dinner that was anything but professional. The betrayal hit me like a ton of bricks. My heart raced and my hands trembled as I read their interaction. I felt sick. I could hardly focus for the rest of the day, and my mind was swirling with thoughts of anger, betrayal, and disbelief. How could she do this? To me, how could he? Mike had been my closest friend, and now he was practically screwing my wife behind my back. That evening, I confronted Emily. I laid everything out, the emails, the timeline. I could see her face drain of color as she realized the extent of my knowledge. Instead of the apology and remorse I expected, she turned it around on me, claiming I was being paranoid and insecure. She tried to convince me that the emails were taken out of context, that Mike was just being friendly, and that I was overreacting. It was like watching a train wreck. Her excuses were flimsy and didn't hold up under my scrutiny. But damn, she was good at lying. The confrontation was a whirlwind of emotions. I felt rage boiling up, but more than that, I felt a deep sadness. This woman, who I thought I knew, was a total stranger. I had trusted her implicitly, and now everything felt like a lie. As she continued to deny any wrongdoing, I felt my heart shatter into a million pieces. It was infuriating and heartbreaking at the same time. In the days that followed, I went through a roller coaster of emotions. I felt anger, sadness, betrayal, and even a sense of relief at having found out the truth. But the overwhelming feeling was still disbelief. How could this have happened to me? I had worked so hard not just for myself but for us. I thought I was building a life with her, and now I felt like I was standing in the ruins of everything I once believed in. This was the turning point for me. I could either let this consume me or take control of my life. While I was still navigating through the emotional turmoil, I started to realize that I had the power to shape my own future. My mind raced with thoughts of revenge, but I also knew I needed to be smart about it. My first decision was to gather evidence, not just for my own peace of mind, but so I could confront both Emily and Mike more effectively later. I wanted to make sure I had the upper hand. The more I uncovered, the clearer my path forward became, and I felt a strange sense of empowerment begin to replace the sorrow. I was done being the victim in my own story. I was going to take charge. My life was about to change, and I was ready for it. I just needed to execute my plan. The next steps were crucial, and I was determined to make sure they were precise and impactful. I had a vision of what I wanted to achieve, and with every passing hour it solidified into something tangible. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life. I had a plan, and it was time to put it into action. As days turned into weeks, the initial shock of Emily's betrayal morphed into a simmering determination. Each time I turned my gaze toward the remnants of our life together, I felt a fire igniting within me. I wasn't just going to wallow in despair. I was going to take control of my life, my happiness, and my business. I started by keeping an eye on both Emily and Mike, watching their interactions whenever I could. It felt like a twisted game of chess, and I was ready to outmaneuver them. The more I observed, the more I pieced together their relationship. They had been meeting at least once a week under the guise of work. And the more I learned, the clearer it became that this wasn't just a fling. They were deeply involved, and that realization fueled my resolve. I also took a deep dive into my business. As the owner, I had access to all the financials, client lists, and internal communications. I meticulously combed through everything, searching for signs of any backdoor dealings between Emily and Mike. It didn't take long to uncover a few discrepancies, missing invoices, suspicious transactions, and odd communications that didn't fit any logical explanation. This was the ammunition I needed, not just for my personal vendetta but to ensure my business remained intact. In the meantime, I began to shift my mindset. I focused on myself, hitting the gym daily and improving my physical health. I poured myself into work, finding solace in the rhythm of my tasks. I decided to take on new projects, channeling my energy into expanding the business. The more I focused on my success, the more I realized how unimportant Emily had become in my life. I was no longer a man defined by his marriage. I was redefining myself. But things weren't simply about self-improvement. I wanted Emily and Mike to feel the consequences of their actions. I knew that confronting them directly wouldn't yield the satisfaction I craved. Instead, I needed to dismantle the foundation of their betrayal slowly and methodically. It was time for the first phase of my revenge. I devised a plan to reveal the affair to others, specifically to our friends and family. I knew that humiliation would strike a chord deep within both Emily and Mike. They had built a facade of a perfect relationship, and I was about to shatter it. One Friday evening, I casually invited a group of our close friends over for dinner. I had always been the cook of the relationship, and I wanted to create an atmosphere that felt normal and inviting. As we laughed and reminisced over old stories, I could feel the tension building inside me. I was waiting for the perfect moment to drop the bomb. When the conversation turned toward relationships, I crafted a story about loyalty and trust. I could see Emily's eyes darting around, sensing that something was off. As soon as I saw the chance, I slipped in a comment about how important honesty is in a marriage. Everyone nodded in agreement, and I took a deep breath, ready to unleash the truth. Speaking of honesty, I started, making sure I had everyone's attention. I recently found out that my wife has been involved with my business partner. The room fell silent. The laughter stopped and the air grew thick with tension. Emily's face turned ashen and I could see panic flickering in her eyes. I continued. I found emails. I saw them together multiple times. They've been lying to me, and it's time for everyone to know the truth. The shock rippled through the room as my friends exchanged glances, disbelief etched across their faces. I could see some of them quickly processing the gravity of my words, while others looked at Emily in confusion. Emily stood up, her voice quivering as she tried to defend herself. "Jake, you're making a huge mistake. This isn't what you think. You're just trying to ruin everything." Her voice was strained, and I could tell she was grasping for something, anything, to hold on to. But I wasn't going to let her twist the narrative. I didn't let her finish. "No, Emily, you're the one who made the mistake. You chose to betray me. And now everyone needs to see the truth. You and Mike need to answer for your actions." I could sense the weight of the moment, not just for me but for everyone else in the room. The confrontation escalated. My friends began to question Emily, and I watched as she floundered, attempting to weave together excuses that fell flat. It was pitiful to see her grasping for straws, and I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. I was no longer the one on the defensive. She was. As the night unfolded, I could feel a shift among our friends. They began to rally around me, expressing their disbelief and anger toward Emily. They had believed in our marriage, and now it felt like I had been given a renewed sense of validation. I wasn't alone in this battle. I had a support system that believed in me and wanted to see justice served. The fallout from that night was far-reaching. I knew that Emily and Mike would be forced to confront the reality of their actions. I had planted the seeds of doubt and shame, and now it was time to watch how they reacted. I felt a renewed sense of power surging through me. I had turned the tables, and it was exhilarating. The dread and sadness I had felt weeks prior were fading. I was reclaiming my narrative and positioning myself for the next phase of my plan. Revenge is a dish best served cold, and I was just getting started. The fire within me burned brighter than ever, and I was determined to see it through to the end. Each step I took felt more invigorating than the last, and I couldn't wait to see how this would all unfold. After that explosive night, the atmosphere in our circle of friends shifted dramatically. Emily was now a pariah, and I was the one who had been wronged. I could feel the weight of their sympathy and support, which fueled me even further. It was a strange feeling, like I was stepping into a new chapter of my life, one where I was no longer defined by the betrayal but by my response to it. The fallout was immediate. Emily tried to maintain her composure in front of our friends, but the facade she had carefully constructed was crumbling. She became increasingly isolated, and I noticed that she avoided social gatherings. When she did show up, the tension was palpable. A few of our friends even told me how awkward it was to be around her after everything had come to light. It was as if she had betrayed not just me, but them as well. In the weeks that followed, I took great pleasure in watching Emily squirm. She tried to reach out and talk to me, but I kept my distance. I didn't want to hear her excuses or apologies. I was done with her manipulations. I'd seen her true colors and knew that any words coming from her mouth would be tainted by deceit. Meanwhile, I turned my focus back to my business. I had uncovered more irregularities in the financials, and it was clear I needed to act before Mike could do any further damage. I gathered evidence and prepared to confront him. I wanted him to face the repercussions of his actions, not just for sleeping with my wife, but for his betrayal as a partner. One afternoon, I called Mike into my office. I had everything laid out on my desk: emails, missing invoices, and a timeline of their meetings. I could see the nervousness in his eyes as he walked in, but I put on my best poker face. "Mike, we need to talk." I gestured for him to take a seat, and as he did, I could feel the tension thickening in the air. "I've been looking over our financials, and I've found some discrepancies," I began, keeping my voice steady. "You and Emily have been crossing lines that you shouldn't have, and it's time you face the music." Confusion washed over his face, followed by a flash of realization. "What are you talking about?" He stammered. "We've always been transparent with the books. Is that why it took me digging to uncover the truth?" I shot back, leaning forward. "You think I wouldn't find out about the emails, the meetings, the money that's gone missing? You're not just my business partner, you've been my wife's lover. You've betrayed me on both fronts." His face paled, and for a moment I relished the look of defeat in his eyes. But then the denial kicked in. "Jake, you're misunderstanding everything. We were just trying to strategize for the company's future." I cut him off. "Save it. I've seen the emails, Mike. I know your conversations with Emily were anything but business-related. She's been lying to me, and you've been complicit in that deception." He shifted in his seat, glancing around the office as if looking for an escape route. "You've got it all wrong. I never meant for any of this to happen. It was just a moment of weakness." "Moment of weakness?" I retorted, my voice rising. "This isn't a mistake, Mike. You've been actively pursuing my wife. You've ruined not just our friendship, but our business partnership as well." He fumbled for words, but I could see the realization setting in. He was cornered, and there was no way out. "Listen, I'm not here to discuss your excuses. I'm here to tell you that I'm terminating our partnership. I'm taking full control of the company." The look on his face was priceless, shock mixed with desperation. "You can't do that. We built this together." He protested, but I was firm. "Not anymore. Your betrayal has cost you both your business and my trust. I'll be speaking with our investors and making sure they know exactly why this is happening." I could see the panic rising within him, the realization that he had lost everything. It was intoxicating. I had become the master of my own fate and the power shifted back into my hands. With the meeting over, I felt a sense of exhilaration. I had taken a bold step, not just in confronting Mike, but in reclaiming my business. I was done playing the victim. I was ready to be the victor. As weeks went by, I took the necessary steps to officially sever ties with Mike. I consulted with a lawyer to ensure everything was legally sound. I was determined to make sure he faced the consequences of his actions. It felt liberating to regain control, and I was ready to emerge from the ashes of betrayal stronger than ever. While I was busy rebuilding my company, Emily continued to spiral. She reached out multiple times, trying to apologize and beg for forgiveness. I ignored her, knowing that any engagement would only drag me back into a toxic cycle. I was not going to let her back into my life. One evening, as I was wrapping up work, Emily showed up at the office unannounced. I had just finished a meeting with a potential investor and was in high spirits. Seeing her standing there, looking vulnerable and desperate, was disconcerting. I took a deep breath, preparing myself for whatever she had to say. "Jake, please, I need to talk to you," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "Why are you here, Emily?" I asked, keeping my tone even. "What could you possibly say that would change anything?" "Just give me a chance to explain," she said, her eyes searching mine for any sign of compassion. "I know I messed up, but I didn't think it would turn into this. I thought we could work through it." I couldn't believe the audacity of her words. "Work through it? You mean like you did with Mike? You had an affair, Emily. You shattered my trust in our marriage. What makes you think I would ever want to work this out?" Her facade of confidence crumbled, and I could see the desperation in her face. I was confused. I thought I wanted something different, but I realize now that it was always you. "I love you." "I want to fix this," I scoffed at her declaration. "Love? This isn't love, Emily. It's selfishness. You hurt me and threw everything we built away for a fling. You've lost me and there's no coming back from this." I watched as her expression flickered from desperation to anger. "You're making a mistake, Jake. You don't know what you're throwing away." "No, I know exactly what I'm throwing away. I'm throwing away a lie and I'm reclaiming my life. I'm done." With that, I walked past her, leaving her standing alone in the office. It felt surreal to finally close that chapter. I was no longer tied to the deceit and heartbreak. I was moving forward, ready to embrace whatever came next. The power had shifted entirely, and I was not going to let it slip away again. I had made my decision clear. I was taking complete control of my life, my business, and my happiness, and nothing could stop me now. The weeks that followed my confrontation with Emily and the severance of my partnership with Mike were a whirlwind of transformation. With each passing day, I found myself feeling lighter and more liberated. I channeled my energy into expanding my business, making it a priority to build something that was truly my own. I started networking with other professionals, seeking out new clients, and exploring innovative ideas that I had shelved while distracted by my failing marriage. I felt like I was finally free to pursue my ambitions without the weight of betrayal dragging me down. It was empowering to see the results of my hard work manifest as my company began to thrive. I hired new talent, reorganized our structure, and implemented fresh strategies that had been long overdue. The success of my business became a beacon of hope, a reminder that I could rise from the ashes of infidelity and betrayal. But while I was busy building my empire, I still had to deal with the remnants of Emily's actions. She was relentless in her pursuit of my forgiveness, attempting to reach out through friends and even sending me messages on social media. Each time, I felt a surge of anger and disbelief. How could she think I would just forgive her after everything? I decided to take a strategic approach to my newfound freedom. I consulted with a therapist, not just to process my emotions, but to ensure that I was making healthy decisions moving forward. It was helpful to talk with someone who could provide an objective perspective, guiding me through the emotional aftermath of the betrayal. I learned to acknowledge my feelings of anger and sadness while also embracing the empowerment that came from taking control of my life. One day, as I left the office after a long day of work, I received a call from one of my closest friends, Sarah. She was a mutual friend of both Emily and me, and she had been supportive throughout this entire ordeal. "Hey, Jake, I know things have been rough, but I think you need to hear Emily out. She's really hurting right now," she said, trying to gently persuade me. "Hurting? She made her choices, Sarah. I have no obligation to listen to her excuses," I replied, feeling a surge of frustration. "I'm not interested in hearing how she wants to make it right now that she's facing the consequences of her actions. I understand, but she's reaching out to me, and I think it's coming from a place of genuine remorse," Sarah continued. "Maybe just give her a chance to explain herself, or at least to say her piece before you completely cut ties." I mulled it over, weighing her words carefully. Part of me felt that Sarah was right. Emily was struggling, and perhaps hearing her out could provide me with closure. But I also didn't want to give her the opportunity to manipulate my feelings again. After a lengthy discussion, I agreed to meet Emily, but only for my own sake. I wanted to hear her side, if nothing else, to solidify my decision to move on. We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe, and as the day approached, I felt a mix of apprehension and curiosity. Would she attempt to manipulate me again? Would I see any signs of genuine remorse? I had no idea what to expect, but I was prepared to stand my ground. When I arrived, Emily was already seated at a table in the corner, her eyes scanning the room as if searching for reassurance. She looked different, more fragile, less confident than the woman I had confronted weeks earlier. There was an air of vulnerability that I hadn't seen before, and it caught me off guard. "Jake, thank you for meeting me," she said, her voice soft and hesitant. "I know I don't deserve this, but I really wanted to talk to you." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "Let's hear it." She took a deep breath. "I've spent the last few weeks reflecting on everything. I've come to realize how deeply I've hurt you, and I'm truly sorry. I was so caught up in my own insecurities and desires that I couldn't see how my actions would affect you." I listened, but I remained guarded. "So you admit you were selfish?" "Yes," she replied, tears welling in her eyes. "I was. I wanted something different, something exciting, and I didn't think about the consequences. I never wanted to hurt you, Jake. You've always been the person I loved the most, but I let my own issues cloud that." It was difficult to decipher her sincerity. I had heard apologies before, and they often felt hollow. "You say you love me, but love doesn't justify cheating. You broke my trust, and that's something I can't just overlook because you're feeling guilty now." "I know," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted to take responsibility for my actions and let you know that I'm working on myself. I'm in therapy trying to understand why I did this. I want to be a better person." I watched her, feeling a mixture of pity and anger. Part of me wanted to believe that she was evolving, but another part felt a deep-seated resentment. "What do you want from me, Emily?" "Closure. Forgiveness. Because I can't give you either. I just wanted you to know how sorry I am," she said, choking on her tears. "I should have never let it get this far. I should have been honest with you about my feelings instead of seeking validation from someone else." At that moment, I felt a wave of empathy wash over me, but it was quickly overshadowed by the memories of betrayal. "I appreciate that you're trying to take responsibility, but you need to understand that your actions have consequences. I'm moving on. I'm rebuilding my life without you in it." Her expression shifted from desperation to resignation. "I understand. I just wanted to say that if you ever change your mind, I'll always be here. I'll always care about you." I nodded, acknowledging her words but knowing that it wouldn't sway my decision. "I need to focus on myself now, Emily. I wish you well, but I need to close this chapter completely." With that, I stood up and left her sitting at the cafe, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. I had given her the chance to express herself, and while it didn't change how I felt, it brought me a sense of closure. I was moving forward, and I was ready to embrace the next phase of my life. Reclaiming my power felt good, and I was determined to keep building on that momentum. I had transformed my pain into motivation, and with every step I took towards my goals, I felt stronger. The world ahead was full of opportunities, and I was ready to seize them. As I walked away from the cafe, I realized that I had finally closed the door on my past. I was ready to face whatever lay ahead, unencumbered by the weight of betrayal. I was no longer a victim. I was a survivor, and I was ready to thrive. With Emily's attempt at reconciliation behind me, I dove headfirst into my work. I had spent so much time consumed by my marriage and the mess it had become that I had neglected my business in various ways. But now, the fog had lifted, and I was ready to seize the reins fully. My company was thriving, and I wanted it to reach new heights. I began investing in marketing strategies, hiring more staff, and expanding our client base. I set ambitious goals for myself and my team. Each small victory felt like a step towards reclaiming not just my business but my identity. I was no longer Emily's husband or Mike's business partner. I was Jake, the entrepreneur who had faced betrayal and emerged stronger. As the weeks rolled into months, I built a reputation for my company. I started to land bigger clients, and our revenue began to soar. I felt a sense of pride that had been absent for far too long. I was creating something meaningful and worthwhile, and it felt like a breath of fresh air. My focus shifted entirely from the past to the future. But even as my professional life flourished, the personal aspect felt empty. I had isolated myself from my friends and family during the chaos of my marriage, and now I knew it was time to reconnect. I reached out to old friends and invited them to dinner. I wanted to see them, to share my journey, and to reestablish those connections that had faded away. One evening, I hosted a small gathering at my apartment. I prepared a nice dinner, setting the table with care. It felt good to be back in touch with people who truly cared about me. As my friends arrived, I noticed that the laughter and camaraderie felt different this time. It was genuine and it warmed my heart. Sarah was among the guests, and I could see the happiness in her eyes as she took in the changes in me. "Jake, I'm so proud of you. You've really turned this around," she said as she poured herself a glass of wine. "It's inspiring to see you thriving after everything you've been through." "Thanks, Sarah. It hasn't been easy, but I've learned so much about myself," I replied, genuinely grateful for her support. As the night progressed, we shared stories, reminisced about old times, and discussed our lives since college. The atmosphere was light, and I felt a sense of belonging that had been sorely missing. I realized how much I had needed this, how much I had missed out on by isolating myself. But amidst the laughter and good vibes, I couldn't help but feel a pang of loneliness. I had invested so much into moving forward, but I hadn't truly allowed myself to heal from the heartbreak. The truth was, I missed the companionship and intimacy that a partner could offer. As the evening came to a close, I found myself talking to Sarah privately. "You know, I've been so focused on my business that I haven't thought about dating or putting myself out there again," I confessed. "I don't even know how to approach it. I feel like I'm still guarding my heart." She smiled warmly, understanding my reservations. "It's natural to feel that way after such a betrayal, Jake. But you deserve love and happiness. You've done the hard work of healing, so don't let fear hold you back from experiencing life." Her words resonated with me. I had been so focused on the betrayal that I had nearly forgotten what it felt like to connect with someone. I knew I couldn't rush into anything, but perhaps it was time to open myself up to the possibility of love again. As I lay in bed that night, I thought about my future. I had put so much energy into reclaiming my identity, and now I was ready to start a new chapter. Maybe it was time to let someone in. The thought was both exciting and terrifying. Not long after that gathering, life began to change again. I started going out more, attending networking events, and even trying my hand at online dating. Each interaction became a learning experience, and I gradually found myself opening up to new people. I went on a few dates, and while some were disasters, others sparked a flicker of connection that felt refreshing. One evening, I found myself at a charity gala, a networking event that was highly recommended by a colleague. As I mingled with other professionals, I caught sight of a woman across the room. She had an infectious smile and an energy that seemed to draw people in. I was intrigued and decided to introduce myself. "Hi. There, I'm Jake," I said, offering my hand. "Nice to meet you, Jake. I'm Mia," she responded, her warmth immediately putting me at ease. We quickly fell into conversation, discovering shared interests and values. The more we talked, the more I felt the walls I had built around my heart start to crumble. I realized that I was genuinely enjoying myself for the first time in a long while. As the night went on, we exchanged numbers, and I felt a thrill of excitement. For the first time since Emily, I was allowing myself to be vulnerable and open to new possibilities. We began texting and set up a date for the following week. I was nervous but hopeful. As I navigated this new chapter, I also continued to focus on my business. I was determined to ensure that my success wasn't just a fleeting moment but a foundation for my future. I invested in my team, fostered a positive work environment, and began to delegate responsibilities, allowing myself more time to explore this new personal journey. The combination of my professional growth and the budding connection with Mia felt exhilarating. I was no longer defined by my past, I was shaping my future. I had learned valuable lessons about trust, resilience, and self-worth, and now I was ready to embrace life fully. Throughout this journey, I realized that while I had suffered deeply from betrayal, I had also emerged stronger than I ever thought possible. I learned that it was okay to want love again, that I deserved happiness, and that the scars from my past didn't have to dictate my future. With each passing day, I felt more like myself. I was ready to forge ahead, cherishing the lessons learned while keeping my heart open to new experiences. My life was no longer defined by Emily or her choices. It was defined by me, and I was excited about the road that lay ahead. As weeks turned into months, my relationship with Mia blossomed. We found a rhythm that felt comfortable and natural, built on communication and shared values. I learned to appreciate the beauty of genuine connection again. It was refreshing and filled with joy. Mia was understanding of my past, and she never pushed me to rush into anything I wasn't ready for. Our relationship was free of the toxic complications I had previously faced, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. At the same time, my business continued to thrive. I had implemented new strategies that not only improved our bottom line, but also fostered a sense of collaboration among the team. I found fulfillment in mentoring my employees, encouraging them to take ownership of their roles. Watching them grow and succeed was incredibly rewarding, and it reminded me that I was capable of building something meaningful. One evening, as I was preparing for an upcoming pitch to a major client, I received a text from Mia. "Hey, how about we celebrate your success after the pitch? I have a surprise for you." I smiled at her enthusiasm, feeling grateful to have someone so supportive in my life. The day of the pitch arrived, and I was nervous but confident. I had poured my heart and soul into this presentation, and I was determined to secure the deal. As I stepped into the conference room, my heart raced, but I reminded myself of the progress I had made. I was no longer the broken man who had been blindsided by infidelity. I was a driven entrepreneur, ready to showcase my vision. The pitch went smoothly, and as I wrapped up, I could see that the clients were impressed. They asked insightful questions, and I felt the chemistry in the room grow stronger. When I left the meeting, I was filled with a sense of accomplishment. I had done it. I had landed the deal. Celebrating with Mia that evening felt like the cherry on top of an incredible day. We went to a cozy restaurant with a vibrant atmosphere, and Mia revealed her surprise, a small gathering of my closest friends and family to celebrate my success. The room was filled with laughter, well wishes, and warmth. It was a reminder that I wasn't alone in my journey. I had a solid support system that believed in me. As I looked around the room, I felt a swirl of emotions. I reflected on the painful journey that had led me to this moment. I had faced betrayal, heartbreak, and loss, but I had also discovered my strength and resilience. I was grateful for the lessons learned along the way. They had shaped me into the person I was now. Later that evening, as I was chatting with Mia, I realized that I was ready to let go of the ghosts of my past fully. I wanted to be free of the emotional baggage that had weighed me down for so long. As we walked outside, I took a moment to pause, looking into her eyes. "Thank you for being patient with me and for being such a positive force in my life," I said sincerely. Mia smiled back, her eyes sparkling. "You've worked hard for this, Jake. You deserve to be happy." In that moment, I understood that the journey wasn't just about revenge or reclaiming my business, it was about healing. I had learned to trust again, not just in others but in myself. I was ready to embrace the future wholeheartedly, unencumbered by the shadows of betrayal. As we stood outside under the stars, I finally felt a sense of closure regarding Emily. I had faced her demons, confronted the pain, and emerged victorious. I was no longer tethered to the past. I was looking forward to a bright and promising future with Mia. I realized that I could be who I wanted to be, a successful entrepreneur, a caring friend, and a partner who was open to love. I had taken the shattered pieces of my life and built something beautiful out of them, and I was proud of that. From that point onward, I made a promise to myself. I would never let betrayal define me again. I would continue to grow, to love deeply, and to pursue my dreams with passion and purpose. I was ready to embrace whatever life had in store for me, knowing that I had the strength to face it all. And in that moment, with Mia by my side, I felt like I could conquer the world. I was no longer just surviving, I was truly living.